Welcome to Living Love, a podcast about how to live a heart-centered life. My name is Victoria Price, and this is episode 11, A New Way Forward. Our journey together has begun in love with the big L. In writing down what you love about yourself, I asked you to dive deep, past lifelong fear-based habits of self-doubt and deprecation. I asked you to choose to listen to love, and you did it. Now I'm going to ask you to keep listening to love, because in order to invite the transformational power of love practices into our hearts and lives, we have to start out where we want to end up, and that's always in love. As you move through the exercises and practices in this book and podcast, you may notice different kinds of feelings starting to surface. If they feel unfamiliar, uncomfortable, or just plain weird, please don't worry. This is all part of learning to live as if you have never left that field of love we talked about. But however discomforting this living as if may feel at first, it's totally normal. You're starting to shift really old habits of being. The good news is that the more you live as if, the less as if it will feel, and the more it will just feel like living. You see, what we're doing at the beginning of our journey together is relearning how to see ourselves through the eyes of love. Many of us didn't grow up being taught to see ourselves this way. Some of us forgot as we grew older. This is why we need to be retaught by love with the big L. By inviting this conversation with love back into our lives, we inevitably begin to feel love loving us back whole. It's a powerful feeling. But it's also one that can easily slip away at first as we move back into our busy everyday lives. That's why we need different kinds of tools and practices to help us stay centered in our hearts. So, now that we've invited love back into our lives, our next step will be to live as if we have arrived at the place where we've been longing to go in our most heartfelt dreams and desires. Instead of viewing that as some unreachable goal or pipe dream, we're going to learn how to discover its presence in our hearts right now. In other words, instead of identifying a problem we want to fix and working our way toward its repair, our hearts will reveal the love that heals by showing us that this love is already inside each and every one of us. Usually, when we identify a problem that needs fixing, we find a resource that can help us. A plumber figures out what's clogging the pipes. A therapist attempts to get to the root issue. A doctor tries to isolate the source of the pain. A dietitian identifies our eating triggers. There's nothing wrong with that approach, except that identifying the core issue sometimes doesn't help us release it. Finding the source of the pain doesn't always lead to healthy ways of relieving it. And dieting does not always squelch the urge to overeat. This fix-the-problem approach may be why so many of us find ourselves increasingly depressed, obese, over-medicated, indebted, and unhappy. When trying to fix the problem does not actually fix the problem, we can find it hard to believe that things will ever change. We can become caught in a cycle of hopelessness and despair. On the other hand, when we learn to live as if, we start out where we've been longing to arrive. And where's that? Well, it's what I learned from Oliver when I was 6, and it's as true now as it was then. Love is always where we want to be. So together, we're going to practice love by living love. This means living as if we've already arrived in that place in our hearts and souls and dreams and desires to which we have been longing to go. Because when we practice love by living love, love transforms our lives. So next week, we're going to take a deep dive into what practice is and does for us. I'm going to actually share some wisdom from a friend of mine who's actually played at Carnegie Hall. But this week, I just want you to start witnessing the places where you've become habitually focused on the problems. Try jotting them down in your journal and then close the journal, close your eyes, put your feet on the floor, take a deep breath, and just try to center in your heart. Try to open your chest and let love in. Just that little exercise this week. Okay, until next week, keep living love. Together, we're already there.